Relax. Final Fantasy Collector Boosters aren't actually F tier. That slot is actually reserved for a different Final Fantasy product. And honestly, it deserves to be there. And the frustrating part is, we all wanted it to work. When sets released in 2025, nobody had any time to react. There was too much hype and way too many products. But now that the dust has settled, some releases aged beautifully, and some didn't survive a second look. Today, I'm tier listing every single 2025 Magic the Gathering product, not by hype, but how they were actually received in the wild. And I'll be breaking down which products still make sense to buy in 2026 based on playability and collector value. And let's get right into it with the first release of the year, Innistrad Remastered. First product of the year, we have Innistrad Remastered Play Boosters. Now, I think Innistrad could be the last remastered set we ever get. Wizards has actually come out since the release of this product saying that they're not going to do any more remastered or mastered sets for the time being. It doesn't mean that they can't come back, but it means that for now they're not going to be doing any more. I generally like remastered sets a lot because they include a lot of high value reprints that are really playable in Commander and just have cards that people really want. But I think Innistrad Remastered actually kind of missed the mark on this one, because if you compare it to other remastered sets that came before it, like Dominaria Remastered that had tutors, or Ravnica Remastered which had shocklands, I think the general consensus is that Innistrad was kind of only okay. I mean, it was great if you were an Edgar Markov fan, because of course it had a serialized Edgar Markov, but outside of that, I think it was only okay. Now with that said, the draft format for this set does feel pretty good, so I am going to put this into B tier. I think that it was, you know, it exists, it's fine. And for the collector boosters, I think same thing, I'm going to put them in B, because I think it was a fine product. It was okay, nothing really to call home about. Again, if you're an Edgar Markov fan, I think it probably goes a little bit higher. And that's it. First set of the year done. So now we're on to Aetherdrift. But before I get there, I do want to say that I'm not going to be doing any secret layers. There were just way too many, and this video would be 2 hours long if I had to go through all of that as well. And the other part of this is that I am going to be ranking this based mostly on draft, and then mostly on the value of the cards for Commander, and also collector value, because those are the 3 things that I really care about when I'm looking at a Magic set. So Aetherdrift as a set, I think it gets a lot of hate, but I actually personally think it's kind of undervalued. I'm just going to go ahead and put the play boosters into a solid drop. The draft format for the set was pretty polarizing. I do think that people, you know, thought that the format was a little bit slow to start off with, and I do think that green was a little bit too powerful. And I mean, you had a bunch of cards in here that were just natty creatures with no abilities on it, and just, you know, big bodies. And I think that's something that we don't really see so much in Magic these days. But at the same time, Aetherdrift did have a bunch of iconic creatures in the mix as well, including Loot the Pathfinder, Medican Core, or Vin Wixit, one of my favorite mono blue legends. Fun story, my buddy Billy actually has a Commander deck built around Vin Wixit that can reliably draw his entire deck by turn 5 or 6 and doesn't even have any game changers in it. So crazy Commander, really fun, and I think, you know, definitely some underrated staples in this set. And for collector boosters, I think same thing. I mean, it's going to go up in A for me, because I think some of the art treatments in this set are super underrated, really nice. And again, a lot of cool cards you can get out of these boosters, and a lot of ways to actually make back your pack value if you care about that. So I think overall, pretty solid drop. So pre-release kit is just going in the pre-release kit section here. I mean, I will be ranking them based on how good they were relative to each other, but for all intents and purposes, Aetherdrift pre-release kit was fine. It was a pre-release kit. And same thing for the bundle. I mean, I think it was okay. You know, you got some play boosters. In saying that though, our next one is slightly more controversial. We have the Finish Line bundle. Now, hold on. So I actually have a Finish Line bundle right here, and I'm going to rip this open just so I can illustrate a couple of points. Okay, so box itself, really cool, really fits the theme. I love this product, very cool. Yeah, great. Inside, we get stickers, which is fine. Stickers are okay. We get a box topper, which I also really like. I think having a box topper in products like this with special cards in them is fantastic in principle. We get, of course, our 6 play boosters, which is, you know, standard for bundles of this nature. And you actually get 2 collector boosters, which is awesome. So on all of those sort of metrics, fantastic. Also, we get our little promo pack, which has, I think, 3 of the lands from this set. Let's just open it up and have a look. 3 of the lands in this set that are all in extended art and foil, which is great. All the Raceway lands. And we get the Amonkhet Raceway here. We get the Avishkar Raceway, and then this one is Moraganda. Yeah, Moraganda Raceway. So you get the cool Raceway sets and then your foil lands, which I think is pretty cool. At the back, you get these really yellow lands, which are basically the full art lands from this set, but with this really kind of garish yellow treatment. And this I didn't really understand, if I'm being honest with you. I didn't really understand why they were so yellow. And the same thing with the box topper. These also came out super weird, because again, the cards were reprints of cards that were in the set. You'd get a couple more lands, so you get your Forest, and here we go. We got a Zahur, Glories Past, And that's our card. Okay, so 1 land and a thing. I could have sworn it was 2 cards, but maybe I'm mistaken. I'm not a fan of this treatment. It's so yellow. I've said this like 20 times now, but it's so strange that they decided to go with this. I understand the idea of like, oh, you know, it's a finish line or whatever, which actually now that I say out loud, I don't even really know why it went yellow. But anyways, long story short, weird treatment for the cards. In principle, I like all the products in here, but I just think it's a very strange execution. And this is the major sticking point for me. This is probably the worst D20 they've ever made in any bundle I've ever seen in Magic the Gathering. I mean, I understand the theme, right? Like, I like the idea. I like the idea of going for a race car theme, a raceway theme, like sort of, you know, the flags. But you can't even make out the numbers on this that clearly. Like, I mean, I think this thing is just, like, rough. And so every time we have these out on the table, we're always complaining because the number is so small. You can hardly see it. And yet, you know, it's on theme, it's on brand, but probably the worst D20 they've ever made in one of these bundles. So yeah, I'm really not a fan. Now I own 2 of them because I just ripped that bundle open, but I had to illustrate to you guys for the sake of illustration, you know, exactly what we're dealing with here and why this one is going to make it into D tier. I don't think it's F, okay? Because again, I think there's a lot of value in this. You get a couple of collector boosters, you get, you know, the box topper, which I think is fantastic, but simply because of the yellow treatments and the D20, this is going in D. Moving on to the commander decks. So I think the energy-based one with Saheeli, I think this one, I'm going to go ahead and put it into B. I actually think the deck itself is not horrible. I think one of the big drawbacks of this deck is that there is this Thopter sub-theme that doesn't really make sense, I think, with the rest of the deck. And I think one of the other big drawbacks is that they did release the Modern Horizons 3 pre-con before this, with Satya, Aetherflux Genius, and the Fallout one with Dr. Madison Lee that both focused on energy. Those 2 were in white, blue, and red, Jeskai colors, and this one was in blue, red, and green. And I think they kind of tried to do the same thing, but really just replace white with green. Overall, not a bad deck, not the best deck, and I think, you know, for me personally, playing energy, I combined the 3 precons into one deck, and it sort of made a lot more sense to me, so that's something that you can consider doing. But for that, you know, it exists, it's fine. The other one, I'm going to put this lower than Saheeli, but also in B. I think that, you know, with the Temet deck that was focused more around zombies and attacking, this deck just felt a bit janky. I mean, it's kind of middle of the pack, what you'd expect from a precon in Magic the Gathering. But the issue with this one is because you're playing a more aggressive theme, I think a mid-power deck that focuses on aggro in Commander is always quite tricky to pull off. And this one just felt janky when I sort of played with it and played against it. So I think this one, solid B, low B for me. Not quite C, but I'll say low B. I probably put a lot of Aetherdrift stuff a lot higher than a lot of you guys would. So if you disagree with any of my takes, do let me know in the comments as always. And moving on now to a hopefully less polarizing set, we have Tarkir Dragonstorm. I'm going to go ahead and put the play boosters right away into A. I think I'm going to put them slightly ahead of Aetherdrift. Because I do think that Tarkir had a better job of balancing, even though the format did get kind of solved at the end, and I'll get into that in a sec. With Aetherdrift, you had one color that was particularly strong with green. I think with Tarkir, you had a couple of different strategies that would work that just sort of were better than every other strategy. That included either going Mardu and just playing a really aggressive and fast deck, or really just picking very high value bombs and playing for late game and doing a more control style of play until you could reach your big bombs. With that said, I do think the overall balance for this set was quite a little bit better, and I do think the cards as well were pretty iconic. If you enjoyed playing dragons, you had a lot of really cool support from the cards in this set, and you could upgrade your decks, and I think that alone makes it a very, very solid drop in my opinion. For the collector boosters, I think same thing, you know, really, really good cards, really cool treatments, and I think the bonus sheet from this set is incredibly underrated because it did include a cycle of fetch lands, which I think people really like, and sort of, you know, I pulled a couple of fetch lands from this set. So overall, I think the collector booster is really good. Not quite into S tier for me. I would say, again, high A. I think this set was not the best we've ever seen, but you know, it was really fun when it was out, and I played draft almost every single week when it was out. For the pre-release kits, now these ones are special in a way. I'm actually gonna put them at the highest part of the sort of pre-release kits, with one exception. I think Jeskai will go a little bit after Aetherdrift actually, because I think it was a bit below average. We'll use kind of Aetherdrift as our middle point here to be, you know, sort of the average or expected kind of experience with a bundle or with a pre-release kit. But I think with Tarkir, they did the idea of playing 3 colored clans, and they would give you a seeded pack that actually had cards that would help you play your 3 color combo rather than just opening play boosters and praying that you got the right colors. I think that this was overall a really, really good strategy for a set like this where you are focusing on playing 3 separate colors, because having a seeded pack that gives you already a lot of the staples that you need for that just makes it so much easier in a sealed environment. With that said, I think Jeskai was a little bit weaker and a bit jankier and harder to get the pieces together even with the seeded pack. So for that reason alone, that one's going to go below average and the other ones will be above average. And Tarkir bundle, again, yeah, it's just a bundle. Nothing really to note about that. I think the D20 in this one was fine. I think overall, you know, it's what you expect from a bundle. So goes into average. Commander precons now for Tarkir and Dragonstorm. Now this is an interesting one because there were 5 commander precons, and I do feel like they did a really, really good job with the precons in this set, and they're all pretty fun for different reasons. So let's start with this one. This is the Abzan Armor one. This one focused on letting your defender creatures attack as if they didn't have defender. A really fun gameplay loop. I think this one actually intrigued a lot of people, and this one showed up on the tables a lot when Tarkir was a thing. I think even now I still see this deck from time to time. The only issue with this deck, and the reason that I'm putting it in low B tier, I mean, it has to go higher than Temet, right? Yeah, I think it has to go higher than Temet. So higher than Temet, is it higher than Saheeli? I'm going to put it higher than Saheeli just because, again, Saheeli released with, you know, following 2 other energy precons, and I just thought it was a bit too much of kind of the same thing. This one was interesting because I feel like it was a fun gameplay loop. I think people enjoyed it, but the only issue with this one is that I think it got kind of stale, and it was very obvious to everyone on the table what your game plan was. It was just play big defender creatures and swing for a ton of damage. And I think on that note, it was actually pretty easy to play around this one because you could just remove the commander every time it came out. You could just sort of, you know, identify high value threats like quite a lot. And at the same time, I think the gameplay loop just gets old pretty quickly. So I think that one goes into, you know, sort of mid B for me. Okay, the next one is Sultai Arisen. This one's definitely a fan favorite. I think this deck was really, really good. I'm going to go ahead and, I mean, this one's really close, to be honest with you. This one's really close. I'm going to put it at top of A because I do think this was the best out of the 5 precons that came out in this cycle. Not quite S tier. I do think it's, you know, very high A. The main thing for this one is I think reprint value was really good. I think the synergy within the deck was really good. And whenever this one came out on the table, it sort of felt like almost not really a precon and just like a very solid deck. So on that basis, I'm going to put this one in A. It's fun. It's strong. All the things you really want. Next one is Temur Roar. So I think this one, I'm going to put it in B. I'm putting a high B. I think this one goes in high B. I think that this one was okay. It was just really big creatures. And the main issue with this is I think Eshki's very strong as a commander. I do think the secondary commander, Ureni, is just way too high costed. And so it's really, really hard to play it. And you kind of need to have Giga Ramp in the deck to support a playstyle like that, which this deck doesn't really have, even though it kind of says that it's a ramp deck. So this one was just kind of easy to either identify exactly who the threat was, remove it, and sort of go on from there, or just try to counter the commander if you were playing blue. And that kind of was just a very easy way to shut the deck down. Next up, we have the Mardu Surge. Now, I think this is a prime example of how an aggro deck should be built. I'm going to put this one up just above Aetherdrift here. I think this is a really good deck. I think that generally, again, as I mentioned, the Mardu synergy in Tarkir Dragonstorm was just really, really strong. So having the Mardu Surge deck and having a lot of the sort of key cards featured in this deck made it a very powerful precon, and one that kind of did the aggro format, I think, really, really well. Zergo is a very strong commander. I've seen people build their own decks. I've seen them upgrade this precon, and it does get pretty out of hand very quickly. So I think overall, like, very high quality precon. I think definitely solid, middle of A for me, good quality deck. Jeskai Striker. Now, this is actually the first of the precons that I bought because I'm a Spellslinger guy. So I'm going to put this in low A. I think that some people might disagree with this take, and some people might think it's probably the worst precon out of the bunch. But in my personal opinion, as someone who enjoys playing spell-slinging decks, I quite enjoyed this one. I did think there was a lot of synergy in this one for incentivizing you to cast 2 spells, which is really the Jeskai thing from Tarkir Dragonstorm. And at the same time, there were alternate ways to win. Rather than just casting spells, you were also summoning monks, giving them prowess, and sort of, you know, pumping them up so you actually had a creature presence on the board as well, which is kind of a thing that Jeskai does, but I think they executed it pretty well in this precon. So I'm going to go ahead and put this one on the bottom of A. I think it was good, not great, but above average for sure. Ooh. Okay, we're moving on to the spicy stuff. We're on to Final Fantasy. This is there's a lot of products in Final Fantasy, so this is going to be an interesting one. I'm just going to go ahead and throw Final Fantasy play boosters into S tier. I think it has to go in S tier. Let me explain myself. So I know all the OG Magic players are mad right now and sort of saying like, oh, you know, you're Universes Beyond guy and whatever. You know, I'm going to be really honest with you. I think they executed Final Fantasy basically as well as they could have, at least when it comes to the play boosters. In this set, you had the Through the Ages bonus sheet where you would pull one bonus sheet card out of every, I think, 3 play boosters, which is an insanely good rate. So you just get really awesome cards out of these play boosters, and you'd always feel pretty good going to drafts. You'd be like, hey, I'm going to pull some big bombs. I'm going to pull some things I can use for my commander deck. And I think just the level of fantasy and the level of sort of fan service that was included in this set was just off the charts, really off the charts. I also think the draft format for the set was one of the best we've seen in a very long time. I think all of the colors were balanced. You could play pretty much every single one of the 10 archetypes and actually make it work really, really well. And I think for that reason, you know, this set just in my memory is just probably the best set of 2025, simply because the card quality was so good, synergy was so good. I still actively want to play Final Fantasy drafts right now, even though the set's out of rotation. And in my typical pod, we're still talking about playing Final Fantasy draft because we just loved it that much. So I think this one for me, definitely an S tier set. Super, super fun. Now the collector boosters. I ripped a lot of these. When it first came out, this is kind of when I really got into the spirit of ripping collector boosters, and obviously I went completely in that direction with, you know, sort of making short form content, ripping packs. But I think the collector boosters for me will have to go into A, and there's a reason for that. I'm going to put them in, you know, sort of top of A. I do think that it was really fun to rip these. Honestly, they would ordinarily go in S just because of the card quality, and I think the types of cards that you can pull, the Surge Foil treatments look so good on a lot of the commanders. But one thing that I have to say about Final Fantasy that really was just really tough for everybody is that it kind of destroyed the market. The hype with Final Fantasy kind of was the starting point for what caused a lot of game stores to actually switch from selling things at MSRP to selling things at market price. I noticed a distinct difference between before Final Fantasy and after Final Fantasy, where, you know, previously, at least on launch, you were able to get stuff at MSRP. And I think afterwards, you know, you had a very small window maybe to get some stuff at MSRP, but afterwards, everything would just be adjusted to market price. And I think that was kind of a response to, I think, a lot of the stores selling out their Final Fantasy at MSRP, seeing the box price go crazy, and then just deciding, hey, well, you know, we can make more money, so we should just hold on to some product and maybe sell it for market price instead. I'm not the biggest fan of that, and I do think that obviously it's not really the fault of the set. I think the set itself was just so well designed, had so much good stuff for fans of the IP, but I can't in good conscience put it in S simply for that reason. Maybe you disagree, but that's kind of where I put it. The pre-release kit. I think this one is a very solid pre-release kit. I would say it's one of the best ones. And I think this is also kind of contextual because Final Fantasy was just so well anticipated as a set that I feel like has to be sort of top of the pre-release kits simply because it was so hype. And I think that was awesome. That weekend, I played every single pre-release that I could make it to. We hosted a private pre-release within my pod. We all played with each other. Shout out to my buddy Bill. I beat him with Ultima and Absolute Virtue, and we still talk about that game to this date. It was so iconic, and I think this set just has so many positive memories associated with it, just in terms of my time playing Magic and how much I loved it. So I for personal reasons, have to put it at the top. Yeah. Again, if you disagree, let me know. And for the bundle, I mean, it's a bundle. I'm not going to put this anywhere higher than it needs to be. I do think that the D20 was really nice out of this set, so I think it'll put it at the top of the bundles, but again, just a bundle. The gift bundle. This was nice to open. I think at the time it felt like a really good deal because it's sort of, you got a collector booster in it. It was a, you know, fantastic gift bundle. But for all intents and purposes, I mean, it was just a bundle. So it's not really aggressively bad or aggressively good in any meaningful way for me to put it in a separate tier like the Aetherdrift Finish Line bundle. But I'll say, you know, top of the sort of bundle hierarchy because I did think that this was a solid bundle, had a collector booster, and it did have a really good D20. Oh, man. Oh, I really want to put it above the Tarkir pre-releases. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to do that because I think the D20 was awesome. I have one here. If I'm not mistaken, this is the D20 that came out of the gift bundle, and just, I mean, wow. Like, really, really nice. Really felt the theme. On top of that, actually, I do have one more thing to show you for the pre-release kits, which I want to show you. Hold up. I can't even begin to describe to you, as a Final Fantasy fan, opening up the pre-release kit and having this be the box inside was probably one of the coolest experiences you could have as a fan of the IP. So I am very satisfied to put the Final Fantasy pre-release kit in. You know what? I'm actually going to put it in S tier. It's going to leave. It's going to graduate from the bundles and pre-release kits aisle because I think I want Wizards to do more stuff like this. I think having a cool sort of box for the pre-release is just the best thing, because this is the first time you're seeing the set. This is the first time you're playing it. I think having an experience like this is just really, really cool, for sure. Okay, starter kit. I played this product. I think that the starter kit decks are fine. I think from my perspective, it's not really actually a great product for beginners. I did talk about this in my last video, which I'll link at the bottom of here in the description somewhere. I think the starter kits are marketed as products for people to get into the game, but in my opinion, the decks were a little bit too complicated for absolute new beginners. So I think for me, it exists. It's in there. I'll put it sort of below all these commander decks here in B tier. It exists. It's fine, you know. Commander decks. Okay, so let me give a bit of preface on this. So I think the commander decks from Final Fantasy were actually something that I was really, really looking forward to. I really wanted to play with some of my favorite characters from Final Fantasy. I thought, you know, this is so cool. I ordered the full set. I have a whole set of collector ones as well, which I'll get into separately. What ended up happening with these commander decks, generally speaking, was because there are so many iconic characters in the Final Fantasy franchise, you ended up in a situation where a lot of legendary creatures were added to these commander decks because they couldn't maybe fit into the main set. Maybe they didn't sort of work in the balance of the limited format. And so Wizards thought, okay, let's just put them into commander decks because that's a great way for us to get more legendary creatures into the game that feature prominent characters from Final Fantasy. Now, the issue with that is some of these decks don't actually play that well with just a bunch of legendary creatures. And if you're trying to balance a legendary creature so that it could actually be a commander itself, it makes it a bit difficult, right? Because you then have to make it synergize with the rest of the deck, but it kind of has to do its own thing. So I think that was an issue that was potentially something that was a problem for this set in particular. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's start with Terra. I think the Terra deck was fine. It was pretty weak, to be honest with you. And so I think this one's going to go into C tier because out of the box, I don't think it played super, super well. I thought it was a bit janky. I played against it. I played with it. It was fine. You know, nothing really that crazy. I've seen it upgraded. It's been really good upgraded, but I think you kind of have to upgrade it to make it a smooth playing experience. Tidus is probably the only exception to this, where I think this deck was actually really, really good out of the box. I think the counter synergies and just generally the reprints they put in the set, the new cards they put in the set, all very, very good. So this one's actually going to go into A tier. I think, you know, probably in front of the collector boosters. I think when people think about Final Fantasy and really the best products that were released as part of this drop, I think the Tidus Precon is up there still as probably one of the best products that came out. Then you have Y'shtola. So Y'shtola I'm going to put in also in C tier, actually lower than Terra. And it's exactly for the reason that I described. Y'shtola is a commander that rewards you for playing non-creature spells, and you want them to be mana value 3 or greater. And the issue with this deck is, again, you have a lot of legendary creatures in the deck, and they don't necessarily synergize with the actual game plan. So this one I was actually most excited to play. Again, I'm a big spell slinger guy. I like casting spells. I feel like this deck just fell flat on the execution. And while Y'shtola is an incredibly powerful commander, I think that you need to do a lot of work to this deck, removing cards, adding in new cards, for it to actually feel really good and sort of play properly. Which leads us to Cloud. Yeah, this is the product that's going in F tier from Final Fantasy. Let me explain myself. I was actually probably the most excited for the Cloud deck. A bit of lore here, maybe too. I actually didn't play Final Fantasy VII when it first came out. I was pretty young at the time, and I just never bothered to go back and play it because every time I sort of got old enough and had enough interest in it, it just was one of those games where the graphics were so bad that I couldn't do it. I kind of need to play games that have good graphics, and I, you know, given the amount of love that Final Fantasy VII received, I knew that one day it would probably most likely, almost certainly get a remake of some sort. So I held out until then. I have played the remake. I think it's fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of just the IP generally. So for me, you know, this one was one I was really, really looking forward to. The issue with Cloud. First of all, it's a Voltron deck. So you're playing equipments, you're attaching them to Cloud, he's swinging for massive damage. The problem with that is the game plan is just so scripted that everyone kind of knows that if you just remove Cloud, there's nothing much that you can do to come back from that game. At the same time, there is that issue with legendary creatures where, again, you know, they printed a lot of legendary creatures in this set. They don't necessarily synergize that well with the overall game plan of just make Cloud really big, let him do damage, and just win by commander damage. I think it's very, very janky, and I've advised people against buying this one because, again, this was the second deck that I played after Y'shtola, and I was like, what is happening right now? It didn't feel good. And I think for that reason, I'm going to put this in F. I also will say that I think Tifa as a commander, people were really excited about. Just thought, oh, this is really cool. You can get extra combat steps. But it kind of fell off very quickly. I think people tried the pre-con, maybe tried playing around with the commander, didn't have a very good experience, and I think after that, it just didn't really land the way that it should have. So I'm putting this in F. I think it aged like milk. I think the commander themselves are honestly only okay. You can do some busted stuff with them, but you kind of need to do a lot to upgrade the deck before it's even playable, in my opinion. I feel like I'm going to get some heat for this one, but honestly, let me know what your genuine take is on this. That's just how I feel about it. Yeah, let's go to the collector commander decks. I think these were all kind of like, the same. In fact, I'll put them in the same tier as the other ones. They'll go like just under, like each one of them will go just under where I think they should go. I think maybe the highest they'll go is like B. No, the Titus one is good enough that I think I'll put it up there. But my rationale is just that I think the collector commander decks were fine. The real difference was that all the cards were in Surge Foil, and that's great if you really want to collect them. I have a sealed set of them in my display cabinet over there, and I like it. I like looking at it, but I think to justify the price, if you wanted to play with them, it doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. I think it's just, they exist. The real value from a commander deck, in my opinion, comes from being able to play the commander, having a good experience, bringing it to commander night, and sort of having a good time with it. And I think all of these are just basically, in my mind, the same as their counterparts, just with Surge Foil. So there you go. And that game promo cloud, I think this one I'll put a little bit higher because they did print like a special card for it, and I think you can redeem a copy of Final Fantasy VII with a purchase of this thing. So I think it's great. I think that's a fun way to sort of intertwine the two IPs, but again, it's the Cloud deck, and the Cloud deck is unfortunately not the best deck. So there you go. Scene bundles very quickly before we wrap up as well. I think Final Fantasy XIV scene bundle, I think was great. I think that one, I wouldn't say it's like incredibly overpowered or really like you have to go scramble and go buy it. I think it did have a bunch of cool cards. Noctis Heir Apparent was a nice Voltron commander candidate. And I think some cool new non-creature spells in here like Flash Photography are really cool. I'm putting that into my Wandering Minstrel deck that plays for a Gate win con. So overall, pretty solid product. I think high B for me, it exists. It's good. Probably under the Teamer deck here. I think that's fine. I think the Final Fantasy 1 Garland at the Chaos Shrine, solid. 5 new legends here. I think, haven't really seen any of them at the local game store that I go to. No one's really built a deck around them, so I can't really say how good they are. I would put it slightly under the other scene bundle, which I think makes sense. Then here we have I believe this is the Children of Fate, the Final Fantasy VIII one. This one I'm going to put a little bit higher. I'll put this actually on solid drop. I think top of B. Top of B makes sense to me. The reason for this one is because I think Adia, Possessed Sorceress, is a really cool commander. I want to make a deck around her myself, and I think it's a fun playstyle of stealing people's creatures. So for that reason, this one goes in high B. And the last one, which is the Siege of Alexandria. So this one I think is also really cool. I specifically like one card that they put in here. I'll put this one in A, solid drop. The reason I like this one in particular is because they released a card, Vivi's Persistence, which I think gave support to the 0/1 Black Wizard meta that we got in Final Fantasy. A lot of people like that meta. A lot of people made Kuja decks. A lot of people made, decks built around this idea of pinging down all your opponents with wizards. And I thought that was a really, really cool addition to the set that everyone was excited for. And so the fact that they printed another card in the scene bundle that actually directly contributed to that playstyle, I thought was a really, really cool move. And one that I was excited about because I wanted to make a Kuja deck, didn't feel like there was enough support, and then Vivi's Persistence came out, and I thought, oh, cool, that's a really, really cool card. I like it. I want to put this into my deck. So very cool concept, and I think they should be doing this more, in my opinion, with these scene bundles where they're printing cards that people actually have use for and can sort of fit into decks that they already have. And the Chocobo bundle. Okay, Chocobo bundle's a hot one. I think I actually really like the Chocobo cards. I think the specific cards they put into this bundle were fantastic. I like the treatments a lot on the cards. I will say that my only gripe with this bundle is that it does not contain a collector booster. If they put a collector booster in the Chocobo bundle, I would put it in the S tier without a doubt, because I think that would just be insane value. Similar to, conceptually the Finish Line bundle, where you have, collector booster, you have a special box topper, a special pack. I think the execution on this one was great. All the cards look good, but because there's no collector booster, I'll go ahead and put it in A, I think bottom of A tier for me. I think it was fun. I think people wanted more Final Fantasy. But A feels a little bit too high. I'm gonna put it at top of B. It exists. You know, it feels bad to put it there because I really like it, but again, no collector booster, especially with how the prices went for this one. I just think it feels a little bit like they could have done a little bit better in terms of giving us a bit more value out of this one. Yeah. Okay, so that's Final Fantasy. So I think this was a masterclass in terms of how to actually respect your fan base and also appeal to external IPs and really the model for Universes Beyond, in my opinion, and how to do a meaningful Universes Beyond drop. The next set that we're going to get into, I think, is kind of the same, but for a Universes Within set in the actual Magic universe. So we're going to Edge of Eternities. This set, it took a bit of time for this one to grow on me. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I think that the limited format for this was just very different from Final Fantasy in the sense that, you know, you didn't have as many 2-drops, you didn't have as much efficient removal, so it just felt a bit jankier as a set when I first played it, and for that reason, you know, I was kind of like, man, I want more Final Fantasy, you know, I missed that set. But the more I played Edge of Eternities, the more I realized, actually, this set is really, really good. I think it slowed down the format. It gave us a different way of playing. It sort of mixed things up. And I think that alone was great for the community. And I think it got people who love in-universe sets to genuinely feel like they were in love with the game again. And I think that alone was great. So Edge of Eternities play boosters are going to go straight into solid drop. I'm going to put them above Aetherdrift and probably above Tarkir. Yeah, I'm putting it above Tarkir. I think it was that good. Was it better than Tarkir collector boosters? Maybe not. I think this is a good spot for it. Yeah. Edge of Eternities, fantastic set, really cool. Enough said about that. I think that's fine. Next up, we have the collector boosters from Edge of Eternities. Now, these are actually going to go real high. I'm going to put these... You know what? It's going in S. It's going to go bottom of S for me, but I think Edge of Eternities collector boosters are going to go really, really high because I think the reprint value in this set was absolutely underrated and super slept on. You could get shock lands. You could get special lands. I think land-focused sets just really speak to me as like, okay, this is like something that everybody needs more of because we're building more decks and we want to play more Commander. But the powerful lands are always really expensive. So I'm always at that point where I'm looking at, you know, my checkout cart when I'm trying to buy singles, and the lands alone are worth like $100, $200, and it's just mind-blowing to me that they can cost so much for something that you need to play the game. The fact that Edge of Eternities was a land-focused set, and the fact that you could pull so many high-quality lands from this set makes it, in my opinion, one of the best sets that came out this year, especially the collector boosters, which I think just really have appreciated in value, and I think are still kind of somewhat underrated, just given how high-quality the reprints are in this set. So definitely S tier for me. It's one of the best sets to rip, I think, from this year, and even now when I find loose Edge of Eternities boosters, I want to rip them because I just feel like the expected value is like really, really good. Pre-release kit, yeah, I think it was fine. Again, I'll put it sort of, you know, middle of the pack for this one. I think, actually, to be honest, I'll put it above Tarkir. I think, again, the context for the pre-release kit here was that, you know, everyone was kind of excited. It was an in-universe set again. Prior to this, we had Tarkir and then Final Fantasy, and then Edge of Eternities came out. So, yeah, I think people were pretty ready for it. It was a space theme, which was very different, and I think a lot of people really enjoyed it. So for that reason, it's going to go up there. The bundle, just a bundle. I think it goes below Final Fantasy, but maybe above Tarkir. Yeah, probably above Tarkir, I think, for the bundle. And then we have the precons. Now, this set made some of the most iconic. There were only 2, but they were some of the most iconic precons, in my opinion, for this year. And I think Counterintelligence, this one I bought, I upgraded it. I loved playing it as an artifact player. I thought it was really, really fun. So for me, this one's actually going to go also bottom of S tier. I think the Counterintelligence precon was just insanely good. I think putting a lot of support, you know, really high quality reprints in here. There was Tekbethal, Inquiry Dominus, which was great for proliferate decks. I think Kilo was a really fun commander if you're trying to play a proliferate deck. Just overall fantastic execution on this one, and you know, I think really memorable precon from this set. If we're looking at the next one, this one's actually arguably better. So I didn't buy this one for a little while. One of my buddies wanted a copy of the deck, so I let him have priority over it, and then I picked one up when the store restocked, and what a deck. I mean, this thing is just so strong out of the box. It doesn't feel like a precon. It feels like something that is pretty optimized, and there are some crazy combos you can get out from here, including, you know, from reprints like Ice Tail Explorer, or new cards rather. Ice Tail Explorer, which is in this precon. That card alone, just with any of the other cards that sort of plays you a bunch of lands that come in tapped, just feels so busted, because all of a sudden you have all this mana, you can do all this stuff, you can sack all your lands, bring them all back in one turn. I mean, it's insane, and I've had some definitely crazy wins with this deck. It's one of those decks where I'm leaving unupgraded, because when people want to play precons, I'd love to sit down with a precon that can hold its own and do some fun stuff right out of the box. So definitely really high quality precon that I can't recommend enough. And I would say everything in S tier, like, Final Fantasy Play Boosters, Edge of Eternity Collector Boosters, and these 2 precons from Edge of Eternities, they're all worth buying right now. Like, if you haven't gotten them yet, I still think they're really good purchases, because just the value in these products are just insane. So I think definitely, if you can find them at a good price, go for it. It's strongly recommended. Okay, so we looked at Final Fantasy. It's a masterclass in Universes Beyond. We looked at Edge of Eternities, kind of a masterclass in universe. And that makes the next product a bit more insulting, which is Spider-Man. So this one's going to be a bit controversial, I think. I know that some people like the set. I think a lot of people didn't like the set. I kind of fall into the latter group. So let's start with the play boosters. I think a few things about this set that really upset me. So in Final Fantasy, again, we had the bonus sheet. 1 in every 3 packs, you'd get a bonus sheet card. They changed the odds in Spider-Man to be 1 in about every 24 play boosters, you would get 1 card from the bonus sheet. And that is bad. I mean, that's 8 times less frequent. And I think just on that alone, really didn't feel like a nice move. Really felt like, we had such a good time with Final Fantasy. Everyone enjoyed ripping these really cool cards out of their play boosters. And then you got Spider-Man that comes along and says, hey, well, we don't want you to do that anymore. You're not allowed to have fun. So for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and put Spider-Man bottom of C tier. I think it's just really mid-execution. Of course, there were good things that came out of this set as well. I think that a lot of the cards were really great in Commander. You had stuff like Peter Parker's camera, you had Electro, Assaulting Battery. I think those are staples that people talk about still and include in a lot of different decks that sort of make a lot of sense. At the same time, the draft experience was really not very good, because there was only 5 archetypes. Red was severely underpowered, and I think as a result, you took a format that already had less archetypes and made it even less playable if you were trying to, play red or something, or if you're forced into red because of the seat that you were playing. I think for that reason alone, I think the execution was really not the best for this one. And again, I've been on record saying this before. I don't really blame the design team. I think, it was some decision that was made to expand the set from a smaller set like Assassin's Creed into a full-blown set. And in doing so, I think they had to retrofit a bunch of cards into it. So the fact that draft isn't balanced, I'm not really that surprised. I think it makes a lot of sense. And that brings us to the collector boosters. And I am going to put this in D tier. It's going to go... Is it better than a Finish Line bundle? I'm going to put them below the Finish Line bundle. I feel that strongly about it. The Spider-Man collector boosters, the reason that I have a problem with them is because, it's not really about the card quality. It's not really about the sort of expected value. It's the fact that they printed 1 card, being the Soulstone, which currently I think sells for $40,000 US in the highest rarity. And I think that card alone carries the value of the collector boosters so dramatically that it kind of feels not good to buy these if you're just chasing regular cards. The expected value is just so skewed because there's 1 card that's worth so much, and then the rest of it's just kind of whatever, So I think that for that reason, I'm not a huge fan of that set design. I think, of course, I understand they're doing more Marvel sets in the future. We're likely to see more Infinity Stones, and therefore the value of this is going to be highly speculated on, and maybe that's not entirely Wizards' fault, but I do feel like, just as a set and as an execution point, just really didn't vibe with how this one was launched, and I didn't really have a fun time opening the collector boosters, if I'm being completely honest. Pre-release kit, yeah, I think it was fine. I think this one just stays in the pre-release kit tier. I think a lot of us were kind of not expecting it to be super fun. I'll put this one with Aetherdrift and the, sort of maybe, below Aetherdrift makes sense. I think the Jeskai one was a little bit worse, but I think, let's go ahead and put it there. People were not expecting to have a really great time with this set. I do think the pre-release was a bit more fun than what draft ended up sort of being, because it was the first time seeing the cards, people were trying the archetypes out for the first time, and I think of course there were a lot of Spider-Man fans that were interested in this, but yeah, I think just overall execution fell really flat on this one, and it wasn't the best experience for sure. Spider-Man bundle, it was fine, it was a bundle. I'm gonna put it again probably near the bottom here, underneath the Aetherdrift one. Just thought that this set didn't really land so well. The gift bundle though, I will say, there was one thing about the gift bundle that I really liked from the set, and that's really just the design of the box. Again, I am a big fan when Wizards does fun things like this, where they're sort of, taking IP and sort of making it feel very flavorful and very immersive. And for me, when I saw the gift bundle, I was like, oh, I want that. I want that sealed even, you know? I think the fact that it contains a collector booster inside, I think the fact that, you know, the sealed product looks so good. I have one on my display case. I think for that reason alone, I will put it at the top of the bundles and pre-release kits, because I do think that I want Wizards to do more of this. I want to see more products that lean into the fantasy, that give you a cool looking product that you can sort of be really happy to own and sort of have in your collection, even if it's sealed. Then we have the welcome decks. I honestly just didn't buy these. I think they're for newer players or people like checking out Magic in a store, so I just never really had an experience playing with these. I think they're probably fine, but no strong opinion on them either way. The scene bundle. Now this one, I honestly, as a scene bundle, I thought it was only okay. I think if you are a really big fan of Spider-Man, like sure, it's cool, but I thought the cards, you know, they're all obtainable within the actual sort of set with the collector boosters. I thought the cards themselves weren't that exciting for me, and I think, you know, for that reason, I'm just gonna put it in D tier. Probably above these other two. I think it goes to the top of D. Really, the question for me is just, why did you make this? You know, like, is it really that good of a product? Did it need to be made? Probably not, but if you're a big fan of Spider-Man, maybe you feel differently. I'm not really sure. And now for the final set of the year, we have Avatar. So I think we've talked about great sets, we've talked about not so great sets, we've talked about middle of the pack sets. I think Avatar definitely leans for me towards, you know, an above average set. I think it was really, really good. I had a lot of fun playing Draft. I had a lot of fun playing it when it was relevant. So I'm going to go ahead and put the play boosters in solid drop. I think it goes for me probably above Tarkir, just by a little bit. Below Edge of Eternities, but above Tarkir, I think is where I would put Avatar. I think the draft archetypes were good. Black ended up being a little bit weak in the format, and I think people discovered that quite quickly, so that's probably my only one criticism of it. And I think white and blue was just probably a little bit too strong in terms of how the card design was done, but overall, not bad. I think, you know, the set itself was great. I had a lot of fun playing it, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of Final Fantasy, but it wasn't really as good from a gameplay perspective. From a flavor perspective, 100% there. I actually never watched Avatar. I watched the entire thing leading up to the launch because I wanted to fully immerse myself in the lore, and I have to say I had a really, really great time with it. Couldn't have changed anything about that. The collector boosters, though, I'm going to put them in B tier. I'll put them probably just like ahead of... below these scene bundles. I think this makes sense. Above Innistrad, but sort of below the scene bundles for Final Fantasy. Now, the collector boosters for Avatar, the reason that I'm not a huge fan of them is just because, or not such a big fan of them, you know, I'm kind of neutral, is a couple things. I think one, the neon ink chases, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm not a huge fan of cards without text on them, and I am also not a big fan of just the neon ink pattern. I've seen a couple of them in real life. They're okay. But it's not really something that I feel that strongly about chasing. I would prefer serialized cards. I really like serialized cards. I really like sort of, you know, having more flavor injected into alt arts that I think just really makes sense for the lore. And for the neon inks, I was kind of like, I don't really know how this fits in. I don't really know what the point of this is for an Avatar fan. And so for that reason, you know, being the top chases are not that exciting for me. I just think that they're okay. Now, the pre-release kits for Avatar. So while Tarkir did seeded pre-release kits because they were playing 3-color clans and you wanted to make sure that the synergies made sense, I think the reason that Avatar did seeded kits was purely fantasy, and I think that's really, really cool. So because in the Avatar universe you have earthbending, waterbending, firebending, and earthbending, you had 4 colors just already kind of accounted for, and then you had the black one, which was sort of more kind of focused around, I guess, evil or sort of the villains, which, you know, features Azula on the cover, who's one of my favorite characters. So I think this one, rather than doing it for playability, they did it really for flavor and immersion. And that I really like, and I want them to do this more. I think this is a really, really cool concept of how you can take an IP and make a fun pre-release experience for everyone who's excited for the set, leaning into what the IP already has. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the top of bundles and pre-release kits. I think above the Spider-Man one even. I think all of these were really, really fun. Spider-Man goes on top. Let me explain. I think the issue with these pre-release kits that I had was just that the seeded pack, you would get 1 promo stamped card, and the stamped card wasn't actually in the color that you chose. So if I picked a red pre-release kit, for example, I would not be guaranteed a red colored promo, and it would actually be the secondary color for your seeded pack that you would get the promo for. So my first pre-release for this one, I played black. My secondary color was green, so I got a stamped great divide guide, and my seeded pack had mostly black cards, but also splashing a bit of green. I would have liked it if the promo was guaranteed to be in the color that you picked, because then you can play with your promo 100% of the time, and, you know, it sort of feels like more of a pre-release. But I think, you know, that was the only complaint that I had. I think the other thing is that I would like to see more pre-release kits that are seeded in this way, because I'm not a huge fan of sealed compared to draft, just because if you don't end up getting enough pieces for the color archetype that you want to play, it's really difficult to do so, and being able to have some selection, you know, before you actually get into the game, I think is very valuable, and something that I hope they continue to do. Okay, almost at the end here. I think the bundle for Avatar, again, it's a bundle. It's fine. I think it goes probably just above Tarkir. Good D20 from this one with Aang's head on it, which is good. But the next bundle on the set, the Commander's bundle. This one is going very high. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in S tier. I want them to make more of these. I think the Commander bundle was one of the best products that was released this year, and let me explain why. So the Commander's bundle was a bundle that contained a collector booster, contained some play boosters if I'm not mistaken, and it also contained a pack that had a bunch of Commander staples in them, including an Arcane, a Signet, a Soul Ring, I think a Swiftfoot Boots, and you would get 2 random cards from a list of powerful tutors and free spells. So you had your Deadly Rollicks, you had your Fierce Guardianships, and I think that whole concept was just incredible, because this set didn't come out with their own Commander decks because they said it would take too much time and sort of need a bunch of custom art. So instead what they did was they made this Commander's bundle that had the staples and said, hey, you can just go build your own. And that's exactly what I did. I built a deck using Katara as the commander, the ally double trigger one, and I think being able to sort of pull on some staples that were sort of on theme and sort of fit with the flavor of the set, and then just using cards from the set to actually make a deck, was an experience that I really enjoyed, and one that I hope I can replicate again down the line with other products like this. That Katara deck ended up becoming one of my favorite decks to play. It's a bracket 3 deck that has, you know, no more than 3 game changers. I think it plays really well with ally type synergies and just really, really fun. I pulled off some crazy stuff with it. So I do want Wizards to encourage people to make their own commander decks with cards in the set rather than just relying on precons all the time. Because I think it can be a very, very rewarding experience if you build a deck that you like and is fun, flavorful for the set, and just really hits all the notes that you want it to. Cool. There's also the Avatar Beginners box. I think it's fine. I think it's great. I think, you know, I'll put this in just bottom of solid drop. I actually, to be honest with you, like, didn't buy one of these. I did play with one time, and I, you know, tried the Jumpstart. I think it's fine. I think it's a great product for beginners, and I think especially for an IP like this, which, you know, might have a lot of people that like Avatar but sort of don't know Magic, I think giving them entryways into the game is a fantastic thing to do, and I hope Wizards does that more. For the scene bundles, so the first one we have the Black Sun Invasion. I think this one was only okay. I think I'll just put it in It Exists, because I think it exists. I think it'll go in the bottom of It Exists. Maybe a little bit higher than the starter kit. Yeah, this feels right. I think this one, you know, Fire Nation Turret was kind of a meme. People were interested in that card. I think the good cards from this one that I thought were Sokka's Charge, great enchantment if you're playing ally typal. The Appa reprint was good, but I think outside of that, you know, nothing really too crazy in this one. So, you know, it exists. It's fine. I think, though, for the tea time at the Jasmine Dragon, I think it was called. Yeah, Tea Time with the Jasmine Dragon. I think this one was really good. I'm going to put this at solid drop. I think for a scene bundle, this is the kind of thing that I want to see. So I'll put it sort of... I'm actually going to put it above Aetherdrift. I think it fits right here. So this one was really good because there were a bunch of new legends from the pairings of Aang and Katara, Mai and Zuko, Sokka and Suki. And you also got another Toph card, which I thought was great. So I think giving people 4 more options for commander pairings that were actually really good and really playable, I think makes a really, really good scene bundle, where it's like, cool, here, you can buy this thing if you're a fan, but you can also have cards that are highly playable that you can make commander decks out of, which, again, I think is kind of the main point. Magic is a great game for players, and so anything that you're making that sort of encourages people to play more of the game and play the game in the way that they want to, I think is a fantastic product. And last but certainly not least, we have Avatar Jumpstart boosters. I think these are okay. I would say that, I mean, I think the products are really good, to be honest with you, but I have to put it in C for meh execution. I'll put it at the top of C. The only reason for this is because I think they printed a lot of cards that were only available in Jumpstart, and that made some of the cost of these cards just stupidly expensive, right? On top of that, I think there were a couple cards that they forgot to put in the Jumpstart boosters, and they were only obtainable from collector boosters, and I think it just, again, made the price like really, really crazy. So for that reason, I'll put them in C. I don't like the idea of having really, really busted cards in Jumpstart, because Jumpstart's meant to be a product for people to play when they're sort of getting into the game, not a product that people should be ripping and sort of selling singles for. It just doesn't really make sense that way to me. So I think for that reason, it goes in C. Would like to see it such that they're using more cards that are also included in the play boosters so that everybody can have access to them. Okay, so that is my full tier list of every single product released in 2025. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed this video, do like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of my takes. I'm sure there will be plenty of hot takes in here, so I look forward to hearing from you guys. And if you want to see a video on all the secret layers, do let me know as well. I'd be more than happy to make one down the line. Peace.